If there was an award for the perfect food item, I think chips or fries, depending on who you're asking, are a strong contender for the #1 spot. But when it comes to making chips, there's more than one way to do it. And for reasons too boring to go into, I've ended up with a glut of Maris Piper potatoes, and I thought we'd test each one out. I don't have an air fryer, so I won't be doing that, but seeing as an air fryer is just an oven with drawers, I think we'll start in a similar way with the simplest method, oven-baked chips. For all these chips, I'll be using these Maris Pipers, as I know they're all from the same source, so the end result shouldn't vary too much from chip to chip because the potatoes are the same. I personally think Maris Pipers are the best potato for the job, as they have this light and fluffy texture. They're not waxy in any way, and this gives us the perfect conditions for chips that are crunchy on the outside and fluffy on the inside. But if you can't get Maris Piper, King Edward's, red potatoes, or any sort of golden, fluffy textured variety will probably do the job. For our oven baked chips, I'm keeping it really simple, opting to keep the skin on the potato, as making chips this way is usually done to save time, and I just can't imagine peeling the potato for these chips will yield a result so unbelievably different, it's even worth the effort. Once the potatoes are cut, into a bowl of clean water, just to rinse off any excess starch and to prevent the potatoes oxidizing or going brown while you cut the rest. When you're ready to cook, drain the potatoes from the water, and personally I like to pat them dry on a clean tea towel to remove any excess moisture and give the potatoes a better chance at crisping up. Then it's straight onto a baking sheet, drizzle with a little oil and season with salt and black pepper, give the potatoes a toss together in the oil and the seasoning, and then straight in the oven at 190 degrees to bake for 30 to 35 minutes. Turn over the chips every 15 minutes or so to ensure they're evenly cooking and colouring while they bake, and once they're golden brown, crisp on the outside and soft in the centre, into a serving bowl and serve immediately, as they don't tend to stay crunchy for very long. To be honest, they're absolutely fine. They're not the best chips in the world, they're certainly not the crunchiest, but if you're looking for something a little bit healthier, where you're not deep frying anything, these will do. Next up, French fries. We cut these thinner than the oven chips, as I'm sure you're aware because you know what fries are. I usually aim for about 1 to 1.5 centimeters thick, and once again, I'm keeping the skin on because in my humble opinion, skin on fries are superior. Once cut, the potato is again stored in a bowl of cold water to prevent oxidizing and browning and to draw out the starch from the chip. The reason drawing out excess starch is important is that the sugars in the starch, like glucose, are also removed, which helps prevent the potato from browning or caramelizing too quickly during the cooking process, hopefully resulting in a lovely light golden brown chip and not a dark brown one. You can store the chips in water overnight in the fridge if you want, but I would recommend changing the water every 12 hours or so just to make sure the chips aren't sitting in a bath of their own starches. Once you're ready to cook, pat the fries dry on a clean tea towel. We're doing a double fry method for these fries, so excess water is definitely the enemy when it comes to deep frying, so be thorough. We're blanching the fries in oil first to cook them all the way through without colouring or crisping them up, so deep fry at 140 degrees C for about 7 to 8 minutes until the fries are soft, cooked through, and just developing a light skin on the outside of the chip. Drain the blanched fries on a tray lined with a clean kitchen towel or kitchen paper, and then leave to steam and cool completely. You can put them in the freezer at this stage if you wish, but I don't really have that sort of space in the freezer, so I just leave them out of room temperature until completely cool. Once cool, you can plunge these fries straight back into hot oil at 180 degrees C for 4 or 5 minutes to crisp up on the outside until golden brown. Once cooked, remove the fries from the hot oil and drain. Then while they're still hot, toss them in a bowl with a generous pinch of sea salt and serve them up immediately. Fried potato and salt is still tasty. A step up from our twice fried fries is a chip technique created right here in the UK, the triple cooked chip. Invented and popularised by Heston Blumenthal of the 3 Michelin-starred The Fat Duck, these chips are boiled until almost falling apart, then blanched in the fryer much like our fries were, and finally finished off in hotter oil to crisp up the chips. Though extra effort, this is pretty much the go-to technique for chefs when making chips today. This time we're peeling our potatoes because we're going to be boiling the chips until they are soft and starting to break down, which creates a lot of little fissures and cracks in the surface of the chip that the hot oil can get into and create an even crispier end result. So peeling the potatoes should give us more surface area to break down and more crunch all the way around our chip. We cut the chips a little bit chunkier for this technique as it allows us to boil them in salted water long enough to really soften and break down the outside without losing the entire structure of the chip. Anything smaller like fry size is likely just to fall apart and turn to mash. Once cooked, remove the chips from the water and place on a wire rack to dry. You want air to to circulate around the whole chip to allow the surface to steam dry as thoroughly as possible, and this should give us a crunchier chip. You should have nice fluffy edges to your potatoes, but if you're feeling extra, you can always scrape each chip with a fork to crack up the surface even more and hopefully create an even crunchier texture for you. I wouldn't do it, but you could. Leave to cool completely, then just like the fries, we're blanching in oil for our second cook at 140 degrees C for 7 or 8 minutes until the chips are soft, light golden in color, and just developing a skin on the outside of the chip in order to try and hold everything together. You will end up with chips breaking apart here. It's all part of the game. But don't panic though, because those are going to turn into those incredible crispy little bits that everyone's going to be fighting for at the end of the day. Drain the chips on a cooling rack again and then leave to cool and steam dry completely. Once again, you can put them in the freezer at this stage if you wish, but leaving them at room temperature to cool is completely fine. Once cooled, these chips are ready for their third and final cook. So into hot oil at 180 degrees C for 4 or 5 minutes until crispy and golden brown. Then out of the oil, drain and into a bowl with plenty of sea salt and serve up as soon as possible. It's a lot of extra work, but the results speak for themselves.
That's super light. It's crunchy on the outside and it is so light and fluffy on the inside. They are really, really good.
Now, if you thought the triple cooked chip was a lot of work, I've got one last technique that you are gonna love. It goes by several names: potato terrine, 12-hour potato, confit potato, pomme Anna, the list goes on. Basically, we take peeled Maris pipers and slice them very thinly. For ease, I would recommend something like a mandolin, but you could use a knife or even a food processor with a slicing attachment. Once all the potato is sliced, into a bowl, season with salt, and carefully melt down some unsalted butter without mixing it in order to clarify the butter, separating the clear fat from the milk solids. Carefully remove the clarified butter from the pan and pour all over the potatoes. Toss the potatoes and the butter together, ensuring all the potatoes are covered in the clarified butter. Then carefully layer the coated potato slices in a deep rectangular tin, like a 2-pound loaf tin that's been lined with some silicone paper. I'm using butter as the fat for my potatoes as it brings in a lot of extra flavour, but you can use any fat you like really: oil, lard, duck fat, lamb fat, beef tallow, whatever floats your boat. Once all the potatoes have been layered right to the very top of the tin, cover the potato with some more silicone paper and then into the oven at 140 degrees C for 3 hours. Once the potato terrine is cooked and tender enough to push a knife all the way through without any resistance, place another tin on top and something heavy to help compress the potato down and stick it all together. Then into the fridge overnight to cool down and set up. The next day, turn out your potato terrine and we've got this lovely firm loaf of sliced potatoes with all those lovely layers of cooked potato inside just holding together. Cut the loaf into 2.5 to 3 centimeter slices and then the same again to each slice to create these lovely looking chunky chips. You can cut with or against the grain, it's up to you. I found that cutting with the grain holds together better, but cutting against the grain gives you access to more layers, which makes the chips crispier, but they do have a tendency to fall apart. Once you're ready, plunge those chunky chips straight into hot oil at 180 degrees C for 5 or 6 minutes until crispy and golden brown all the way around the outside. Then drain into a bowl and season with sea salt and serve up immediately. These are by far my favourite out of the lot, even though they do feel like quite a bit of work to get to this stage.
This has far more flavour than any of the others. That is fluffy on the inside, crispy on the outside. It'll taste amazing.
But I have to say, though I am happy with the techniques we've covered in this video, I'm less than happy about the end results with these potatoes, as almost all were just too brown in my opinion, not golden as they should have been. I use Maris Piper for all of these, and it's usually quite a good potato with a nice consistent end result. Personally, I think these are a little bit too dark, and that's probably due to the amylase or the sugar content within the starch in these particular potatoes. So I want to try this again with a different type of potato to see if I get a more consistent colour or better end result. But all in all, I think I've decided that triple cooked chips or this layered potato chip is the one. Check out my Patreon for the full recipes and techniques, or if you fancy watching some more, why not check out one of these recipes that I personally let YouTube pick out for you.